Good evening. This is Cynthia Watke of Cynthia Watke Life Transformation Coaching and of Cariance, a company that caregives the family caregivers. I'm so pleased that are beginning to join me tonight, and I'm so pleased that you're joining me on the replays. I would like to take just a few minutes this evening to reflect briefly on what we have covered this week. We began the week with our very first experience of Ride Out the Storm with the concept of self-awareness. We discussed many aspects of self-awareness, of mindfulness, of what it is and what it isn't. And then the next night, on Tuesday, we segued into the concept of balance, looking at our lives from the standpoint of self-awareness and focus and seeking balance within our lives and calm and composure. The third step, the third experience last night, we moved on to the subject of self-compassion and compassion for others. And I hope you can kind of see as you go through these videos, there's a thread, a connecting concepts leading us from one thought to the next. And tonight we want to segue on into another thought, and that is to ride out the storm of life, all of these immense ups and downs that we have through life as women, as mothers, sisters, daughters, granddaughters, and as family caregivers at times. All the ups and downs in life, we need to be able to ride them out with one other thought, and that is with grit or resilience. Grit is a funny word. To me, it always reminds me of a little newspaper that was sold out in the Midwest when I was a child, and it was called the Grit newspaper. And it had a lot of different interesting anecdotes of families in the Midwest in the farming communities. And it was just a little small newspaper that came maybe once a week or once a month, I'm not sure what. But that word, every time I hear it, reminds me of that very interesting little newsletter type newspaper. But in reflecting on grit, I realized that there's a story in my family that to me has always exemplified a lot of grit, a lot of stick-to-itiveness, a lot of courage and perseverance. Back in the 1800s, my great-grandparents, living in Dublin, Ireland, realized that there was not much future for them as a young couple. My great-grandmother was pregnant with my grandfather, her first child, and they decided to leave Ireland and immigrate to the United States. And they were one of thousands of Irish people and Italians and others from Europe that in the late 1800s came to New York City on a ship and went through Ellis Island and was processed into the United States. When they arrived after some period of time on the ship, my great-grandmother was 7 months pregnant. Now today, if someone said they're going to go on a ship voyage like that to their doctor at that point in a pregnancy, I'm sure the doctors would say, oh no, you're not traveling like that right now. No. But I don't believe that that subject ever came up. And when they arrived in New York City, my great-grandfather left my great-grandmother at a boarding house in New York City and took a trip by train out to Illinois to meet with family relatives there and to seek a place for them to live. And he was gone for a couple of weeks, leaving my great-grandmother there in New York City waiting for him. I've often imagined and wondered what kind of resilience and strength of purpose in her heart did she have to have as a young woman, 7 to 7.5 months pregnant, waiting in a strange city, in a strange place for her husband to return. Sure enough, 2.5 weeks later, he did return, and they caught a train and went west and settled in Illinois originally. The voyage from the first thoughts of emigrating, the planning, the investigating, the figuring out how they could do it, perhaps saving money for the trip, and then making that voyage across the Atlantic to a new country, a new place where they knew very few people, and at the same time expecting their first child, was a voyage of grit. There was something in them that said, we're going to go and we're going to make it and we're going to figure out how to do this. We're going to persevere. And that understanding was translated into their family. My grandfather was that baby she was carrying. He was the first of 12 children. They had 6 boys and 6 girls. And as far as we know, all of them grew up. They didn't lose any of their children to early death or illness. And I know that my grandfather was a man of perseverance, of vision, of hardworking, and he worked his entire life and was extremely successful as a rancher in Nebraska, Illinois, and then in Nebraska. So let's look at what grit really means. Sometimes we can easily correlate it with just the concept of resilience. And we're going to talk quite a bit about resilience tonight. But this old-fashioned word just has some strength to it. It's short, it's easy to say, and it means being tough and having courage and perseverance. It means having the flexibility and the strength inside of oneself to be able to evolve and to roll with the punches and to figure things out and not give up. Resilience has the concept of the ability to continue to move forward by growing and developing through every part of life's processes. Sometimes we grow up and we have visions of things we would like to do and we begin to embark on a career, but at some point we get tired or discouraged or frozen or fear of failure, and we just stop growing and we stop moving forward and we just kind of coast. But to have resilience, there is an understanding that we have to struggle and we have to keep going. And no matter what happens, we can recognize that the struggle of life is, again, a characteristic that's common to humanity, common to all humankind. And if we recognize that, we can continue to work to go through the struggles, through the problems, and have that stick-to-itiveness, that grit, that toughness, to admit that even though things may be hard at times, we're not going to give up. We're just going to keep working on things. There are some myths about resilience. Some people think that resilient people just don't ever get sad. Some people think that resilient people don't take breaks. They just keep on going all the time. Some have this idea that if you're not born with some resilience nature about yourself, you just never will be resilient. You won't be able to develop it. And some people believe that if you're not resilient, well, you must really have a bad attitude. Others have this misconception that resilience is only needed when there's a time of difficulty, and that maybe it's really only beneficial then. And others have this idea that if you are resilient, you're just never going to have any problems. Everything's just going to go fine. But resilience is an aspect of life that can be developed. And I like to think that just as we can develop our bodies and develop our muscle structure, exercise to be stronger, to stay strong and maintain our bodies, we can strengthen our resilience muscles. So let me give you some ideas of some skills to build resilience muscles tonight. First of all, we can strengthen ourselves by challenging ourselves. We can give ourselves some challenges rather than just going with the flow and kind of just doing things every day as we're normally used to doing. We can improve our confidence and increase this belief in our own strength by challenging ourselves to do something new, maybe something that's a little bit difficult, maybe something that we've never even tried before. And we may be risk averse, so we don't want to try it because there may be some risk. But I think it's a great idea to just push ourselves through, motivate ourselves, and strengthen that motivation to take a risk and give ourselves a challenge. When we do that, we strengthen our motivation and our drive. We develop good leadership skills. We become more self-aware and aware of our own motivations. And we build this ability to increase in our understanding of ourselves and the truth that life brings to us. But how can we do that? How can we come within ourselves to say, I'm going to take this new challenge, or I'm going to develop some resilience muscles? There are several ways to do it. The first thing is we've got to learn how to regulate our emotions. We talked about this yesterday. When we have these extremes, and we started this Tuesday night with the concept of balance, when we have these extremes of our emotions from what could be considered very negative all the way to very positive emotions, we need to learn how to deal with the difficult emotions. And we can do that by having a curiosity about where these difficult emotions are coming from. And we can take a harder look and reframe, as they say, or reconstruct our picture in our mind about what this emotion is about. We can reinterpret it rather than just saying, well, he made me do it. I'm angry because, you did this and it made me mad. We can reinterpret it and realize that we looked at things a certain way and we then reacted in a certain emotion that may be negative, but we can allow it and see it for what it is and see the truth of that emotion, and then choose to increase our positive emotions. This skill of emotional regulation is something that most people don't ever really work at. I recently had some conversations with family members, and one of them reflected about his memories of me when I was young and in my 20s, and how reactive I was at the time. And I reacted negatively and with anger when I perceived that someone said something to me that was hurtful. And I reacted out of this deep hurt that I was carrying around within myself. There's where my over-the-top reactions of anger, and really at times saying things that I would regret later, these over-the-top reactions came out of a spirit of deep hurt within myself. And it took years, it's really taken years for me to get even a reasonable handle on this. And I find even now at my age that occasionally something within me just leaps up out, as I said, almost like a ghost. And I go into this very ancient automatic pilot of responding with unreasoning and unthinking anger and saying something in an unthinking way. And do I regret it? Oh my God, yes, I really regret it. Thank God it doesn't happen too often, but when it does, it's not pretty. It's destructive, and I am very repentant and remorseful for my part of such breakdown of communication. Another way to build our resilience muscles, our grit muscles, is to take responsibility. And that's what I'm talking about, that I've had to take responsibility for my emotional ups and downs. I've had to take responsibility for this very old bad habit that developed out of my childhood of being what my mother considered an angry person. I didn't know why I was so angry. I didn't know why I was responding like that. I do now because I got very curious about it and went digging and realized that the process of life to straighten this stuff out for me has been a process to forgive others and to make changes within myself. Is that easy to do? No, not at all. Is it worth doing? Absolutely, yes. Another thing that we can do that would help us to build a resilience muscles, to have a resilient strength to face the ups and downs of life, is to build community. We talked last night about how there's a common humanity, that all of the emotions and the things of life are common to humankind. But when we choose to live in isolation, thinking that I'm the only one that's experiencing this and nobody understands me, and I'm just going to stay away from everybody because nobody can really get me. These periods of time of being isolated actually create much more stress in our lives and lead us into even deeper problems. And it's really, honestly, very, very difficult to build community, a oneness, a teamwork, an understanding with other people when we want to isolate ourselves. If we're alone, we can feel self-justified in our aloneness. We can believe that there's no reason for us to change because nobody is really needing to see us act any differently. Nothing rubs against us. Nobody confronts us. Nobody says that's great or that's bad. That's great, but this really is annoying. This is great and that's offensive. Nobody says that to us because we're isolating ourselves. So if we want to build some resilience to be able to navigate the ups and downs of life, we have to communicate with others and then allow ourselves to be held accountable. I find today that the concept of holding ourselves and others in our families accountable in a kind and loving way is really, it's a lost art. Children are not being held accountable for their actions. Brothers and sisters are not being held accountable for their actions. Society often doesn't hold people accountable for their actions. And our actions come out of our emotional structure and out of our thinking. So if we want to build resilience and grit and that strength to keep going on, we have to communicate with others and remain accountable, become accountable to someone. Another way to strengthen your resilience is to strengthen your relationship with yourself. In our first experience of Ride Out the Storm, we talked about going through the storm of life with self-awareness. When we're self-aware, when we're focused on what is going on in our internal world, we can strengthen our relationship with ourselves. Just the very nature of taking time for an internal look, an internal assessment, taking time for self-care, making those kind of choices naturally leads to a strengthening within us because our self-care addresses things that are happening and we begin to change. One of the things that we need to address in those kind of situations is critical self-talk. Most of us have a critical judge in the back of our mind, maybe sitting on our shoulder over here, that says, oh, you messed up again. Oh, that wasn't very nice. Why did you say it that way? Oh, you should just stop trying. Various different things that we're basically beating ourselves up with. That critical voice may have associations with a parent or a teacher or some other adult in our childhood that had a critical spirit towards us. and we internalized that and believed that critical spirit about ourselves. So we perpetuated it by being critical to ourselves. But it's time to take care of ourselves and express love to ourselves and to find a way to shut off that critical inner critic. I learned a little mechanism, a little modality of how to do that recently. When you notice that this critical spirit, this critical judge is talking to you inside your head, if you stop and basically say to the critical judge, you know, I hear you, and I've heard that a lot of times, and I understand that that's what my mind thinks about me, but I don't believe that about myself anymore, and it's okay, but I'm choosing to think about myself in a different way. Okay, critical judge, I hear you. Yeah, I feel that, and I see it, but I really do believe that I want to think of myself in a different way. I'm not needing to beat myself up anymore. So it's okay, critical judge. You know, I know that that thought's still there, but we're going to just kind of put it aside for now. When we do this, we're basically facing these difficult things head on. The difficult things that are in our own mind, we're facing them head on because we're giving them space to exist. We're giving them a little bit of time. We're not reacting out of them, but we're choosing to tell ourselves, you know, I'm going to be kinder to myself. I'm going to let myself off the hook. I'm going to work on these things so that there is very little for me to be self-critical about. That's really, truly, genuinely true. While we do this, we can let go of this self-judgment and try something new. Let go of the judgment that's coming from that inner critic and become our own inner coach to try something new, to encourage ourselves, to coach ourselves, to say, hey, you know, that was a good try. You tried hard on that. You spoke very kindly to that person. You know how to do this. A lot of wonderful messages we can tell ourselves. And one of the ways to get some of those good messages out, the bad messages and the good, is to take your phone with a little record button and just set a 10-minute timer on your phone and then just start talking to your phone. My inner critic keeps telling me this. I hear this all the time in my head, but I don't really believe that anymore. I believe that I am capable. You can tell yourself important things that you need to hear. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to suck on this cough drop for a moment because I have a terrible throat. If you like to write, you can do the same thing with a journal. Many therapists encourage people to journal, and some people do well with that, and others just have an aversion to writing things down on paper because then it becomes so real. I have some aversion to that. So I have found that it works better for me to talk to myself. I'm a verbal person and a visual person. So if I talk to myself and then record it, which works great, and then I can listen to it, I hear my own voice telling me what I really do want to hear. And it begins to develop new patterns in my brain that defeat that inner coach. Defeat the inner critic. But even if we make decisions and make a pathway in our lives, a space and time, and give energy towards this creation of resilience and grit in our lives, there are some things that might hold us back. And these things hold us back not only from developing more resilience and grit, but developing many other aspects of our life. There are areas of life that can hold us back from any kind of forward process and progress. And the first one is procrastination. Oh man, do we like to procrastinate, don't we? There are people that is just the name of their game, procrastination. I've had a period of time in my life where I procrastinated a lot. And procrastination is a very human response. The desire to put off, in some situations, it's putting off something mundane or difficult because we just don't want to tackle it. Put it off for tomorrow. When I lived in Mexico for a year, I was just amused sometimes by the thought that, well, mañana, let's just do it mañana. We'll take care of it mañana. We'll take care of it tomorrow. Putting it off for another day seemed to be, back in the 80s, a big part of the Mexican culture. Mañana, okay, just go with the flow today. We'll take care of it mañana. But failing to act, even on what could be a mundane thing, sets a pattern of not acting. When we make a choice to not act and not follow through and not take an action, we're actually doing an action. We're just sitting there and allowing other things to take precedent and to take our time, to take our focus. So I encourage you to look this, if you have a little bit of a problem with procrastination, look it in its face and say, okay, I'm going to start being aware of where I procrastinate and think about why I procrastinate. Another thing that could be holding you back from developing your resilience muscles or from personal development in general is a fear of failure. Fear will trap us. Fear will stop us and freeze us. But even more than that, a fear of failure is like something that just stops us completely at times. We can become so afraid of failure that we won't try anything because somebody might judge us for failing. We might not get it exactly right, so that's a failure. We might have planned everything all out to the nth degree of detail and then tried to accomplish it like that. And if it all didn't come together exactly how we visualized something in our mind, then it was a grand failure. Having this fear of failure keeps us from taking any kind of risks, from seizing any opportunities. It paralyzes us, and we just beat ourselves up with the idea of failure. And when that happens enough times, where we believe that something we've tried to do was a failure because it wasn't perfect, eventually we're so fearful of it that we are stopped. We are just stopped in our tracks, and we make no progress as a person. Failure is not disaster. Failure may not be failure at all. It may just be a learning experience. You may just not have found out the information that you need to know yet, something that is worth finding out yet. We need to reinterpret what failure means to us. Imperfect action. That's all we need to take is imperfect action. We're not going to ever take perfect action because perfect is unattainable. We may think that we know what perfect is for us, but honestly, it's unattainable. We need to just imperfectly move forward and do our best and learn from every experience and go on and try something again. And allow the fear of failure to go. It's one of those things that don't serve us anymore. That's one of the things that needs to go away. The third thing that could hold us back is distraction. Distraction is a lack of focus. I have found in certain times in my life that because there was some hurt in my heart, things that I either didn't know how to deal with or didn't know how to get help to deal with, I would avoid those thoughts by distracting myself. The distraction sometimes came in the form of too much television watching or Netflix binging, or it came in the form of too much eating, snacking. It can come in the form of scrolling aimlessly through Instagram, through the news feed. We could watch the news for hours. We could just find something that distracts us so that we don't feel badly about ourselves, and we don't feel anything. We just are kind of mindless. These things pull our attention, and our attention can just flip from where we are focused for a moment to something else. And when that happens, we need to be able to be aware of it, first of all, and secondly, to pull our minds back. And that is one of the practices of guided meditations, is for us to learn how to notice when our mind is wandering and gently say, okay, mind, let's come back, and then focus on breathing and focus on whatever the guided meditation is, so that our minds can get into practice in focusing. Just like if you wanted to learn the piano and to take piano lessons as I did as a child, it isn't good enough just to go and have your lesson at your teacher's, with your teacher, and go home and put the book on the piano and then walk away and never sit down and practice any of the songs that she assigned you. And the next week you pick up your book and you walk back and you go to the teacher, and then you struggle through the songs that you haven't looked at all week. I used to teach piano lessons for a number of years when I was in my 20s, before we went to Mexico. And I had a little girl once. Her mother so badly wanted this little 9-year-old girl to learn to play the piano, but she wasn't ready for it, truly. But even more than that, the mother did not have any self-discipline and didn't know how to not only encourage her child, but require her child to help her to practice every day 20 minutes to half an hour. 20 minutes really at that age. So week after week, she came back and she couldn't play her little songs. She struggled through them exactly like she struggled through them the week before. She made zero progress. And after about 6 weeks of that, I finally said to the mother, I think if you want her to learn to play the piano, you probably want to wait till she's a little older, maybe 11 or 12, try it again, because she has no desire and she doesn't have the self-discipline to practice, and it's just not working. When we have that sense that we need to keep at something, we need to practice something, a meditation practice can lead us and assist our mind to become more focused and more self-aware. The fourth thing that holds us back from developing resilience and other characteristics in our life is self-doubt. So we have procrastination, fear of failure, distractions, and then on top of that, self-doubt. And where does self-doubt come from? I think it comes from the way we're reared, the way we grow up. Perhaps, as I mentioned last night, you didn't have the affirmation you needed, or there was a critical spirit in your home that kind of made fun of the efforts you made. And when you tried to do something, it was never good enough. Self-doubt will undermine all efforts, because you feel like, well, what's the point of me trying this, because I might not do it well enough. They have too high of expectations for me, and I'm not sure if I could handle that. I definitely wouldn't be able to do it as well as this person, or I see that person doing so well with that. Man, I just could never try it, because I would never get to be that good. No matter how hard I tried, I'd never be that good at that ability that someone else has. So our own story gets all clogged up with self-doubt, because it stops us from trying anything. It adds to our self-critical spirit, adds to the inner critic saying, nah, you really can't do that. Look at them, they're so good at it. And what we don't realize when we say those things to ourselves is that when we're comparing ourselves to someone else, we have absolutely zero idea of what that person's perseverance and stick-to-itiveness meant over a period of time for them to develop the ability that they have. It didn't come overnight. Sometimes we could have a propensity or a gift, or they say a talent, to be able to do some specific type of function, whether it's something musical or artistic or organizationally or in business. We may have a gifting to be able to learn to do that well, but we still have to work at it. We still have to work to develop that. But other people looking at it may, out of their self-doubt, believe that somehow it was so easy for them, but it would never be easy for me. But life has taught you some skills that you may not even recognize. Your own life journey has formed you, has informed you, and formed you into who you are today. And your future life journey will continue to form you. You and I can be more developed and grow in wisdom and resilience if we look at these four things and decide that we're not going to let these hold us back anymore. No more procrastination. I'm not going to be afraid of failure anymore. I'm going to just take some risks and try something. I'm going to stop being so distracted. I'm going to work on focus. I'm going to look at my self-doubt and why do I doubt myself so much? And we can work on these things because we're self-aware and we're willing to take that hard look. Most every evening I've talked about being a family caregiver. And as family caregivers, if you are one or anticipate that you will have that aspect in your life at some point, you will want to have a strong spirit. You want to have a toughness, a strength and resilience and grit, because you're going to need them. In the context of being a family caregiver, you have to maintain and pay attention to your own mental and spiritual needs. You've got to set some boundaries so that you know what roles you're willing to do and can do. You're careful about saying yes to everything. You realize that there are some things that you're risk averse to do, but other things you're comfortable in doing. You have some limits, self-imposed, and limits because of your life situation. In those times of being a caregiver, we need to look at what holds us back and be gentle with ourselves, because honestly, we're going to go through a huge range of emotions. Underneath, sometimes there's guilt and anger, depression, grief, emotions that are often very, very difficult to deal with, when at the same time we're spread so thin with so much responsibility. In those times, we need a coach. We need a therapist. We need a pastor. We need a good friend. We need somebody to talk to. We need someone that can help us sort our emotions out and find this inner strength to deal with the reality. We also may need to forgive and let go of grudges from the past. If we have a responsibility to help care for an elderly family member and perhaps have some long-held, deep-seated anger towards them that may be totally justified, it's going to be more difficult to let go of that and move in a positive direction and help them. I know for myself, I've struggled over and over in my life to forgive my father for some things. And even to this day, just recently I realized that I hope, God willing, that I'm coming to the point of actually totally letting go some of the angers I have towards him and forgiving him. You know, it's one thing to say I forgive him, but then to live it out in a positive direction is very important. And it's a journey. Another thing that can help you to develop resilience is to follow your faith. It's okay to doubt and have questions, but stay connected to your faith in God, your faith, whatever type of faith you have, and take time for the daily rituals, the prayers, the meditation, to continue to develop your faith in what you believe and in the meaning that caregiving gives to you. As I said last night, we are bestowed a great honor when we have the privilege of alleviating the suffering and giving healing and a helping hand to someone that we love. But to do that, we need to maintain our faith. We need to maintain our inner spiritual walk. Sometimes we need to change things up. We need to do something fun. We need to look to have some relief from the stress and do something fun with someone, to change the dynamic that's happening within ourselves, to change our energy. We also may need to reset our thinking, looking again at our attitudes, our perspective, our thoughts, our emotions, and go through a reset. And to do all those things, whether you are in a perfect storm of life that's around your own personal nuclear family, your children, your work, your relationship with your spouse or significant other, or perhaps you are at a different place in your life as I am, that you are in a perfect storm of many circumstances, of many things that are pulling you in many directions, and you're spread too thin, and you realize that you need to be able to reassess yourself. You need to reset your emotions and thinking. You need to seek support. Well, that's what coaches are about. That's what therapists, pastoral counselors, from different angles and different approaches, there are people to help. And that's what I'm about. I'm about helping, serving, encouraging, coming alongside and giving you the support you need. Do I know what exactly that support looks like and needs to look like? Do I know what's happening in your life and what goals you have? No. I can guess, I can ascertain, but the most important way I can do that is to talk with you and to hear your story and to hear what it is that you know you want to work on. And that's a starting point. So tomorrow and on Saturday, I will be sharing more about the type of coaching that I do. But I truly believe that not only is it appropriate for a coach to offer a coaching package that really sets out a program that's appropriate for a lot of people, but there are always spaces and time and energy that should be given to a customized, not a cookie cutter approach, but a customized coaching experience for your needs. I hope that you have seen so far this week, through these 4 teachings and sharing experiences that we've had, I hope you begin to see my heart and begin to have some interest in really understanding that I'm a person that you can trust, and that I could and will be very willing to help you. So you can seek support from me, and I hope that you will do that you'll take an opportunity to talk to me and set up a time to just talk together to see whether we could mesh and I could be a support to you. Now, we've had quite a long talk about grit and resilience tonight. And I want to encourage you to know that you can handle this. You can handle more than you give your self-credit for. Difficult emotions may get the better of you many times, but they do pass, and you can always make your way through them. By bringing mindfulness and meditation into the process when you're going through hard times, you can train yourself to recognize your own resilience. You can see that you do have inner strength. You can see clearly that you are capable of handling the difficulties, and that you can train and will train your mind to know that you're okay. So I have a brief meditation to share with you tonight, as I have done every night this week. So I encourage you right now, I encourage you from my heart to just sit back comfortably in the chair where you are, or perhaps on the couch, or maybe you're lying on your bed listening to this. And just softly close your eyes and begin to ground yourself in your body, feeling your feet, perhaps on the floor, your body in the chair, the armrests that your hands may be on. And as you begin to just breathe normally in a rhythmic manner, I encourage you to put your hand again on your heart as we did last night. Because in our hearts, in our spirit, in our heart, many times this is where those difficult emotions are housed. So just take a deep breath, breathe in, inhale, and then exhale. In, exhale. Inhale, exhale. One more deep breath. Inhale, hold it a second. Now exhale. Return to breathing rhythmically, your normal rate of speed, your normal rate of breathing, and bring to mind a difficult emotion that you've experienced recently. Don't indulge your mind in reviewing the story of what happened. Just focus on that emotion, that feeling that you had. You can do this by tuning into your body and noticing perhaps where this sensation, this feeling of that emotion actually is present. Perhaps it's in your throat. Maybe you feel kind of choked up. Or maybe it's in your temples. Your temples may be throbbing as you think of this emotion. Or maybe you have kind of a clenched feeling in your chest, like your heart is kind of in a little bit of a panic. Or maybe your back is tensed up. Notice where in your body this emotion has become present. Feel this emotion in your body and lightly and carefully investigate your capacity to be with it. Just allow that emotion to be there, not the story of what happened. It's not important right now. But the emotion that you felt that was a difficult and strong emotion, just live with it a moment. Just live with it. What about doing this feels overwhelming or unmanageable? Do you feel like you just can't live with it? Well, if you do, ask yourself if you can just handle this feeling for just this little bit of time, for a few moments. Continue to be aware of your bodily experience with this emotion, examining whether you really can be present with it or not. Continue to breathe and just feel this emotion. When this emotion is present, what is your mind doing? Notice the thoughts that arise and this general feeling of your mind. Well, how is your mind responding to you allowing this emotion to come back up? Ask yourself again, is there anything arising that's just too much to handle? If it feels too much, just tell yourself, it's okay. I can handle this emotion for just a few more minutes. Continue to breathe. Continue to focus on this emotion that you felt. Let it wash over you, but not control you. Let it wash over you without rejecting it or allowing it to get bigger. We can, in these moments, reflect on the painful moments and the difficulties in our life that have caused us to feel this kind of emotion many times. The small frustrations, the larger experiences of grief and tragedy. Those situations have perhaps caused you to feel some very strong emotions, but you truly have made it through all of those moments. You are here today. You've made it to today. You have had and have exhibited resilience. You have a natural resilience that has allowed you to go through those painful moments and the larger experiences of grief. Remember that you truly are capable. You are capable and you are resilient. You are capable and you are resilient. And now I want to give you a message of hope. May you be well. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you recognize the inner resilience that you already have. May you remember who you are and get to know yourself in a deeper and more loving way. Now, as you come back to yourself, to your present moment, begin to move your body and take a deep breath, a deep cleansing breath. Breathe in, breathe out. Let all this junk go. Let those emotions just flow on out of you. Breathe in, breathe out, and just let it all go. And one more time, breathe in and exhale. As you return to your present state, to noticing your surroundings, know that your resilience is strong. Your love of life is whole. You are capable of much. May you be blessed tonight. May you be well, happy, healthy, and live in great peace.